Hello Aurora lovers, I'm Dale Bone from Dale Bone Imaging, and this is Aurora Hunting 101. This is episode 10, What Does KP Mean? KP is widely used in the Aurora enthusiast community as well as on apps and websites. It is usually the first numeric value we learn. What it means depends on where it's being used. Most fundamentally, it is the current reported KP value. This is how KP is defined. It's an indirect measurement of the solar winds, but its definition has some annoying quirks. Second, it is used for space weather forecasts generated by NOAA and other groups. This is the KP value in forecast sections on your Aurora apps. It is a set of values predicted by NOAA's solar wind models. In this case, it is a predicted KP reading. Third, it is used on Aurora visibility maps, which show the southern limit to see the Aurora at each KP level. Sometimes call these Aurora zones. For example, if you are in South Dakota, you probably cannot see the Aurora unless the current KP is higher than KP 5. As you can see, this gets used in different ways, but what is it? The name KP originates from the German phrase planetarische Kennziffer. Now, let's see how well I pronounced that. Google.
Planetarische Kennziffer.
Yeah, okay, not great, but I'm getting better at that. So a simple definition is it's an index of the amount of disturbance of the Earth's magnetic field caused by the solar wind. So let's break that down a little bit. It is an index like the Richter scale for earthquakes or the hurricane category number, for example, a category 4 hurricane. KP goes from 0 to 9. Scientists use magnetometers to measure the Earth's magnetic field. When the solar wind is strong, it causes fluctuations in the field. This is a way of indirectly measuring the strength of the solar wind from the ground. And as I mentioned, unfortunately, it has one important quirk. It is the current value, the current value is the maximum value in a fixed 3-hour period. So again, its current value is the maximum in a fixed 3-hour period. It's not an average. It's not the maximum over the last 3 hours. It's the maximum value in one of 8 3-hour periods during the day. So starting at midnight, it goes midnight to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, and then 8 times 3 is 24 hours. So now you know why NOAA's 3-day forecasts are for 3-hour periods. That's because that's the definition of KP. They're providing a maximum KP value for each of those fixed 3-hour periods. In my mind, the most annoying part of that is the maximum value. This affects falling values much more than rising values. For example, if at midnight the KP was at 2, and then over the next 3 hours it rose up to 5. So say it went 2, 3, 4, 5, and at 3 a.m. at the end of the period it's up at 5. If you looked at the current KP reading on your app or Space Weather Live or a number of other places, you would see those values going up. That's fine. On the other hand, if after 3 a.m. it started going back down and it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, so at 6 a.m. or just before 6 a.m. it drops to 2, you're not going to see that because at 3 a.m. the maximum value was 5, and that's going to be the maximum, that's going to be the current KP value for that entire 3-hour period. So you could be out hunting for Aurora, and your app says the current KP is 5, but it might have already dropped down to 2, and it wouldn't show because that maximum value is locked in until the next 3-hour period. And I pay attention to where I am in the period, so I know at 9 p.m. to midnight that maximum is going to reset after midnight, right? If so, 11 p.m., I'll wait another hour and I'll know what the new current KP is going to be. I do find that fairly frustrating, and that also affects NOAA's forecast, right? So they are forecasting the maximum value in each of those 3-hour periods. It doesn't mean, all it needs to do is peak at that for 5 minutes or a minute in their models. It's probably much longer than that, but, it could peak at the beginning, it could peak at the end, you don't know. So that's the best case, is what's showing up in those 3-day forecasts, and actually even the longer term forecasts. That's important. If you start looking at the daily one, that's going to be the peak value for the whole day, right? And then finally, KP is a measure of the disturbance of the Earth's magnetic field caused by the solar winds. It's not really an aurora forecast. A strong solar wind tends to do both cause magnetic disturbances and create strong aurora. Sometimes it does one and not the other. And you can't tell when it's doing that just based on the KP readings. So personally, I use a high KP forecast or even a high current KP as a reminder to check the hemispheric power on Space Weather Live. This is also the HPI value on NOAA's 30-minute forecast, and I'll provide links to those in the notes. That's certainly, I pay much more attention to KP, or to HPI than KP. So in summary, KP is an imperfect but still useful tool. It's used as a proxy for aurora forecasts and current conditions, but it's important to keep in mind those limitations. The main two are, it's not an aurora forecast. It's an indirect measurement of the solar winds. Secondly, it's a maximum value for a fixed 3-hour period, which is fine when the KP is rising, but not when it's falling. At night, it's better to follow HPI, and I'll cover HPI in episode 12. With that out of the way, please check out episode 11, what is the NOAA 3-day forecast, and I'm wishing you clear skies and happy hunting.